She was right above me, my alien boss's unexpected move. The collision. The observation deck stretched before Isla like a cathedral of stars, its curved windows offering an unobstructed view of the cosmos. She'd been hunched over her workstation for 6 hours straight, her eyes burning from reviewing spectral data that refused to make sense. The rest of the station had retired hours ago, but sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford, not when she was this close to identifying the anomaly in the neighboring star system. Dr. Chen. The deep voice made her jump. She spun around to find Commander Zephyr Aldrin standing in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the corridor lights. Even after 8 months on Nerevian Station, his presence still commanded attention. The way he carried himself with quiet authority, the slight luminescence of his skin that marked him as Aldrinian. "Commander," she replied, trying to steady her voice. "I didn't hear you come in." That was evident. His expression remained neutral, but she thought she detected a hint of amusement in his violet eyes. "It's past midnight, station time. Your shift ended 7 hours ago." Isla gestured to her screens, where waves of data scrolled endlessly. "The pulsar readings are showing irregular patterns. If I can isolate the variable." "The variable will still exist tomorrow," Zephyr interrupted gently, moving closer. "As will your ability to analyze it, provided you allow yourself adequate rest." She wanted to argue, but the warmth in his tone disarmed her usual defenses. There was something different about the way he spoke when they were alone, stripped of the formality he maintained during staff briefings. Before she could respond, the station's emergency lights flickered. Then everything went dark. The sudden absence of the ever-present hum of electronics was deafening. Isla's breath caught as she instinctively reached for the edge of her desk, her other hand flying out blindly for support. Instead of the desk, her fingers connected with warm, solid fabric, Zephyr's uniform. "Easy," his voice came through the darkness, steady and close. Too close. She could feel the heat radiating from him. "Don't move. The emergency protocols will engage in a moment." But the moment stretched. Red emergency lighting finally activated, bathing the observation deck in an eerie glow that made the stars beyond seem even more distant and cold. A mechanical voice echoed through the station. "Solar flare detected. Level 3 radiation protocols engaged. All personnel remain in current locations until further notice." Isla's stomach dropped. Level 3 means sealed compartments, Zephyr confirmed. She could see him now in the crimson light, his features sharper, more defined. "We're locked in until the radiation passes. Approximately 2 hours. 2 hours. Alone. With the one person she'd been carefully avoiding outside professional necessity." She pulled her hand back from his chest, suddenly aware of how long it had been resting there. "The data, I should back it up before." "Already done." He moved to the window, gazing out at the universe beyond. All critical systems initiated automatic backups the moment the flare was detected. "Your research is safe." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken things. Isla had become an expert at maintaining professional distance over the past months. Ever since that first staff meeting when Zephyr's eyes had met hers across the conference room and something in her chest had tightened unexpectedly. She'd buried herself in work, used data and equations as shields against the growing awareness that she looked forward to his inspection rounds more than she should. "You don't have to stand there like a guard," she said finally, surprised by the softness in her own voice. "We might as well be comfortable." Zephyr turned, and in the emergency lighting, his expression was unreadable. "Are you certain? I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable." "You don't," she admitted before she could stop herself. Something shifted in his gaze, recognition, perhaps, or permission. He moved to the observation bench that curved along the window, leaving space beside him. Isla hesitated only a moment before joining him, maintaining a careful distance that felt both necessary and absurd given the intimacy forced by their confinement. "I've been meaning to ask," Zephyr said, his eyes returning to the stars. "What drew you to astrophysics? Most humans I've encountered in deep space are here for adventure or escape. You seem driven by something else." The question caught her off guard with its genuineness. "I wanted to understand where we fit," she answered honestly. "Humanity spent so long thinking we were alone, and then suddenly we weren't. I needed to see the bigger picture, to find patterns in the chaos. And have you found patterns? Some. She looked at him, really looked, perhaps for the first time without fear of being caught staring. Enough to know that the universe is far stranger and more beautiful than I ever imagined. Enough to know I'll spend my whole life studying it and still barely scratch the surface. That doesn't discourage you. It excites me. The corner of his mouth lifted, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face entirely, softening the command in his features into something warm and approachable. I understand that feeling. My people have been exploring the cosmos for millennia, yet every star system still holds surprises. They fell into conversation then, the kind that flows naturally when barriers drop. He told her about his home world, about crystal cities that sang in the wind and oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. She shared stories of Earth, of standing beneath a night sky before light pollution stole the stars, of the moment she decided to leave everything familiar behind for the unknown. Time became irrelevant in that red-lit sanctuary. At some point, Isla realized the careful distance between them had disappeared. Their shoulders touched, then their arms. When Zephyr reached across to point out a constellation through the window, his hand accidentally brushed hers on the bench between them. Neither of them moved away. Dr. Chen, he began, his voice lower now, rougher. Isla, she corrected quietly. When it's just us, you can call me Isla. His fingers, still resting near hers, shifted fractionally closer. Isla, he repeated, and her name in his accent sent warmth spreading through her chest. I should tell you. The emergency lights switched back to normal illumination with jarring suddenness. The mechanical voice announced, radiation levels normalized. Compartment seals releasing. The spell broke. They stood simultaneously, stepping back into their respective roles like donning armor. But when the door unsealed with a hiss and Zephyr turned to leave, he paused in the doorway. Thank you, he said, for the conversation. It's been some time since I've spoken with someone so openly. Me too, Isla admitted. Their eyes met and held, and in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed. The professional distance they'd maintained so carefully had cracked, and she wasn't sure either of them wanted to repair it. After he left, Isla remained in the observation deck, staring at the space where he'd stood. Her hand still tingled where his had touched it, and for the first time since arriving at Nerevian Station, the vast expanse of space beyond the windows felt less lonely than the empty room around her. Breaking protocol. Maya Torres cornered Isla in the hydroponics bay the next morning, her knowing grin impossible to ignore. The artificial sunlight streaming through the greenhouse dome made the rows of earth vegetables glow with vibrant green life, a small piece of home cultivated in the void of space. So, Maya said, pruning a tomato plant with exaggerated casualness, want to tell me why Commander Tall Dark and Luminescent couldn't keep his eyes off you during the briefing? Isla felt heat rise to her cheeks. I have no idea what you're talking about. Please. I've known you for 3 years, Isla. You get this specific look when you're trying not to look at something, or someone. And he practically burned a hole through you with those violet eyes of his. Maya set down her shears, her expression turning serious. What happened last night during the lockdown? Nothing happened, Isla insisted, though the words felt hollow. We just talked. Talked. Maya's eyebrow arched. And that's why you've checked your reflection in every shiny surface since you walked in here. Before Isla could deny it, her datapad chimed. A message from Commander Aldrin appeared. Dr. Chen, I require your expertise with navigational calculations. Please report to my quarters at 1900 hours. ZA. Maya leaned over her shoulder, reading the message. His quarters, Isla? That's not protocol for a simple consultation. He probably just needs privacy for classified work, Isla said, trying to convince herself as much as Maya. Right. Privacy. Maya squeezed her shoulder gently. Just be careful, okay? Fraternization regulations exist for a reason. Command structure, power dynamics. I know the regulations, Isla interrupted softly. Nothing's going to happen. But as she left the greenhouse, Her heart was already racing at the thought of seeing him again. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Isla found herself distracted during her research, her mind replaying every moment from the observation deck, the way Zephyr's voice had softened when they talked, how the space between them had dissolved so naturally, the electric moment when their hands touched. At 1850 hours, she stood outside his door, smoothing her uniform and questioning every decision that had led her here. She could still turn back, send a polite message about being too busy. But her hand was already reaching for the door chime before her mind could overthink it. "Enter," came his voice from within. The door slid open to reveal quarters twice the size of her own, befitting his rank. But what struck her wasn't the space, it was how personal it felt. Maps of star systems covered one wall, not the standard issue charts but hand-drawn ones with notes in flowing Aldrinian script. Books, actual physical books, lined a shelf, their spines worn from reading. A piece of crystal sculpture caught the light on his desk, refracting it into rainbow patterns across the ceiling. Zephyr stood by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. He'd removed his formal uniform jacket, wearing only the fitted black shirt beneath. Somehow, this version of him, less commander, more man, felt more intimidating than his full regalia. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning. "I wasn't certain you would. You made it sound like a professional request." It was. He finally faced her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Partially. I do need help with calculations for our upcoming orbital adjustment. But I'll admit I had additional motives." Isla's pulse quickened. "Such as?" "I haven't been able to stop thinking about last night." He moved closer, but maintained a respectful distance. "About our conversation. About how easy it was to talk with you. How natural it felt." "It felt natural to me too," she admitted quietly. "That terrifies me," Zephyr said with surprising vulnerability. "I've commanded this station for 2 years, Isla. I've maintained absolute professionalism with every crew member. And then you arrived, and suddenly I find myself inventing reasons to walk past the astrophysics lab. Scheduling inspections during your shift. Looking for you in the dining hall." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I thought I was imagining it." "You weren't." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so human, so uncertain, that it made him seem less like an untouchable commander and more like someone just as confused and affected as she was. "This violates every protocol I've sworn to uphold. The regulations are clear about relationships between command staff and subordinates." "I know," Isla whispered. "And yet I asked you here anyway." His gaze held hers, searching. "Tell me to stop, Isla. Tell me this is inappropriate, and I'll maintain our professional distance. I'll ensure your career isn't compromised by my inability to." "I don't want you to stop," she interrupted, the words spilling out before courage could fail her. The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Zephyr closed the remaining distance in 2 strides, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the subtle scent of something like cinnamon and starlight that she'd noticed in the observation deck. "If we do this," he said softly, his hand rising to cup her cheek with infinite gentleness, "everything becomes complicated. Your work, my command, the crew's perception." "I know," Isla repeated, leaning into his touch. "And I'm still here." For a moment, they simply stood there, breathing the same air, balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. Then Zephyr's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and the tenderness of the gesture shattered the last of her hesitation. She rose on her toes as he bent down, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home and launching into space simultaneously, familiar and thrilling, gentle and consuming. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer as her hands found their way to his shoulders, then tangled in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Zephyr rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the day you gave your presentation on quantum entanglement," he confessed. "You were so passionate, so brilliant. I couldn't look away." Isla laughed softly, joy bubbling up unexpectedly. "That was 8 months ago." 8 months of torture, he agreed, smiling against her hair as he held her close. 8 months of pretending I wasn't completely captivated by you. They spent the next hour supposedly working on navigational calculations, but the equations kept being interrupted by conversation, by touches that lingered longer than necessary, by stolen kisses that made them both forget what they were calculating in the first place. Zephyr told her about the loneliness of command, how he couldn't afford friendships that might compromise his objectivity. Isla shared her fear that she'd given up everything familiar for a dream that might always leave her feeling like an outsider. "You're not an outsider," Zephyr murmured, his fingers laced with hers as they sat together on his couch, the calculations abandoned on his desk. "Not to me. Never to me." As the station's night cycle deepened, Isla knew she should return to her own quarters. But leaving felt impossible when his arms were around her, when his heartbeat beneath her ear was the most grounding thing she'd felt in years. "Stay," Zephyr whispered, reading her thoughts. "Just a little longer." So she stayed, wrapped in warmth and possibility, knowing that tomorrow would bring complications but unable to regret a single moment of the choice they'd made. The forbidden touch. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of stolen glances and secret smiles. During the morning staff meeting, Quinn caught Isla's eye and made an exaggerated face, having clearly noticed the way Zephyr's gaze lingered on her when he thought no one was watching. Maya simply shook her head with an expression that mixed concern and happiness in equal measure. Isla tried to focus on her work, but concentration proved elusive when every nerve in her body remained hyper-aware of Zephyr's presence on the station. She'd catch glimpses of him in corridors, their eyes meeting for brief moments that communicated more than words ever could. Once, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same datapad during a joint department meeting, and the jolt of electricity that passed between them made her forget her own name. But their private world shattered 3 days after that first kiss when the station's proximity alarms screamed to life at 0300 hours. Isla jolted awake in her quarters, her heart pounding as red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. The intercom crackled, "All personnel to emergency stations. Asteroid field detected on collision course. This is not a drill." She threw on her uniform and raced to the central control room, where chaos already reigned. Crew members rushed between stations, voices overlapping with status reports and calculations. At the center of it all stood Zephyr, his command presence absolute despite the crisis, issuing orders with calm precision. "Dr. Chen," he called when he spotted her, his tone purely professional despite everything that had passed between them. "I need trajectory calculations immediately. We have 17 minutes to plot a safe course through the field." "On it," Isla replied, sliding into her station and pulling up the sensor data. Her fingers flew across the holographic display, her mind shifting into the familiar rhythm of mathematical problem-solving. But as the numbers coalesced, her stomach dropped. "Commander, the field is denser than initial scans indicated. Standard evasive protocols won't be sufficient." Zephyr appeared beside her, studying her calculations. This close, she could smell that cinnamon starlight scent, could feel the heat of his body next to hers. But his expression remained focused, professional. "Options. We need to thread through this corridor here," she indicated a narrow gap between 2 massive clusters of debris. "But the timing has to be perfect. Even a degree off and we'll clip the edge of this larger asteroid." "Then we don't be a degree off," Zephyr said firmly. He raised his voice to the room, "All hands, prepare for manual navigation. Dr. Chen will feed me coordinates in real time. Lieutenant Quinn, I need you monitoring structural integrity at every junction." What followed were the most intense 12 minutes of Isla's life. She called out adjustments as fast as she could calculate them, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Zephyr piloted with a precision that was almost beautiful to watch, his hands moving across the controls with absolute confidence as he responded to her guidance without hesitation. Complications of the heart. The asteroid grazed their portside shields with a screech of energy that made everyone in the control room flinch. Sparks flew from a console as the station shuddered violently, throwing crew members against their stations. Isla grabbed her desk to keep from falling, her heart in her throat as she watched the massive rock tumble past the viewport, missing them by mere meters. "Final vector adjustment," she called out, her voice somehow steady despite her terror. "Bearing 270, Mark 3. Zephyr's hands moved across the controls one last time, and suddenly they were through, clear space opening before them like a gift. The emergency klaxons fell silent. The red lighting faded back to normal. For a heartbeat, no one moved, the shock of survival holding them all frozen. Then Quinn let out a whoop of relief, and the control room erupted in cheers and embraces. Isla sagged in her chair, adrenaline draining from her system so quickly it left her shaking. They'd made it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually made it. "Excellent work, everyone," Zephyr announced, his command voice cutting through the celebration. "Damage control teams, begin assessment. All stations report status within the hour. Dr. Chen, remain here please. I need to review the navigational data." As the crew filed out, still buzzing with relief and excitement, Isla noticed Maya's concerned glance back at her. Quinn gave Zephyr a knowing look that the commander pointedly ignored. Then they were alone in the vast control room, surrounded by the hum of computers and the infinite stars beyond the windows. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Zephyr crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, pulled her up from her chair, and kissed her with an intensity that stole her breath. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious and breakable, even as his lips claimed hers with desperate relief. "I thought we were going to die," he whispered against her mouth, his forehead pressed to hers. "All I could think was that I'd never get to hold you again, never get to tell you." "We're okay," Isla interrupted, her own hands fisting in his uniform as she pulled him closer. "We're okay because you trusted me. Because we work perfectly together." He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. "When I saw that asteroid coming, my first thought wasn't the station or the crew or my duty. It was you. That terrifies me, Isla. A commander can't." "You saved everyone," she reminded him firmly. "Your feelings for me didn't compromise your judgment. If anything, they sharpened it." Zephyr pulled back slightly, his violet eyes searching hers. "This is dangerous in ways I didn't fully consider. Not just regulations, though those are serious enough, but what it means to command when your heart is invested in one person above all others. Are you saying we should stop?" The question hurt to ask, but Isla needed to know. "No," he answered immediately, then laughed softly at his own certainty. "Stars help me, no. I'm saying we need to be careful. Discreet. I won't let this compromise the station's safety or your career, but I also can't." He paused, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "I can't give you up. Not now that I know what this feels like." Over the next week, they developed a careful rhythm. Professionally, nothing changed. Zephyr remained the exacting commander, Isla the dedicated scientist. But they carved out stolen moments in the spaces between, late dinners in his quarters after the night shift began, early morning conversations in the empty observation deck before the station woke, kisses exchanged in maintenance corridors where no one else ventured. The secrecy should have felt wrong, but instead it created an intimacy that made every moment precious. Zephyr showed her Aldrinian poetry, translating the flowing script while they lay tangled together on his couch. Isla taught him to appreciate Earth music, laughing at his bewilderment over jazz's chaotic beauty. They talked about everything, their hopes, their fears, the strange loneliness of loving the cosmos while feeling unmoored in it. But the station was small, and secrets had a way of spreading like radiation. Maya confronted Isla in the hydroponics bay 10 days after the asteroid incident, her expression serious. "The crew is talking," she said without preamble. "About you and the commander. About how he looks at you, how you're always conveniently assigned to the same projects." Isla's stomach twisted. "We've been careful. Not careful enough." Maya's voice was gentle but firm. "Look, I'm happy for you, I really am. But the regulations exist for a reason, Isla. If anyone files a formal complaint, you could both face serious consequences. Reassignment at minimum. Court-martial at worst." "I know the risks," Isla said quietly. "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, you're falling in love with someone who has absolute authority over your career, your safety, your entire life on this station. That's not just against regulations, it's potentially dangerous, even if he's a good man." "He would never." "I know," Maya interrupted. "I believe that. But what happens when duty and love conflict? What happens when he has to make a choice that affects you versus the rest of the crew? The question haunted Isla for the rest of the day, especially when the answer came far sooner than she'd expected. That evening, Zephyr called an emergency department heads meeting. His expression was grave as he activated the holographic display showing Isla's research project, the anomaly in the neighboring star system she'd been studying for months. Central Command has reviewed Dr. Chen's findings, he began, his voice formal and distant in a way that made her chest tighten. They've determined that the stellar phenomenon poses a potential navigation hazard to commercial vessels. They're ordering us to relocate the research station to a safer distance. Isla felt the blood drain from her face. Relocate? Commander, that would put us too far from the anomaly to gather meaningful data. My entire research project. I'm aware of the implications, Dr. Chen, Zephyr said, not meeting her eyes. However, Central Command's decision is final. We begin relocation procedures in 72 hours. But the data I've collected suggests this could be a new type of stellar formation, Isla argued, standing despite the weight of everyone's eyes on her. If we could just submit a formal appeal, explain the scientific importance. The scientific importance doesn't outweigh potential commercial and navigational concerns. His tone was clipped, professional, completely void of the warmth she'd come to treasure. This discussion is closed. The meeting ended in awkward silence. As the other department heads filed out, avoiding Isla's gaze, she remained frozen in her seat. Zephyr stood at the window, his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. When the door sealed behind the last person, she found her voice. You didn't even fight for it. There was nothing to fight, he replied, still not turning. The order came directly from Admiral Corvin. Refusing would be insubordination. So my research, months of work, potentially groundbreaking discoveries, just gets discarded because it's inconvenient. Because it's dangerous, Zephyr turned finally, and the anguish in his eyes shocked her. The anomaly has shown irregular energy spikes in the past week. If one of those spikes were to occur while we're this close, it could damage the station. I can't risk hundreds of lives for one research project, no matter how important. This isn't about the research, Isla said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. This is about us. You're overcompensating, proving you can still make objective decisions even though we're. Don't, he interrupted sharply. Don't make this about us when it's about keeping this crew safe. I'm part of this crew. My work matters. Your work isn't worth your life. The words burst from him with surprising force. Do you think I don't know what this project means to you? Do you think it doesn't tear me apart to end it? But I read the data, Isla. I saw the energy fluctuations. And I will not, risk losing you because I was too compromised to make the hard choice. The admission hung between them, raw and painful. Isla felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. So what happens now? You make all the decisions, and I just accept them because you're the commander and I'm. You're the woman I love, Zephyr said quietly, the words falling between them like a confession and a curse. And that's exactly why I can't show you any favoritism. That's why I have to hold your projects to an even higher standard, make the difficult calls even when they hurt. Especially when they hurt. That's not fair, Isla whispered. No, he agreed, moving toward her slowly. It's not. None of this is fair. But it's the reality of what we chose when we decided duty and desire could coexist. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it even though anger still simmered in her chest. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that had become their private language. I love you, he said again, the words easier this time but no less weighty. That won't change regardless of where this station is positioned. But I'm responsible for 347 lives, Isla. I can't let my feelings compromise that responsibility. I understand, she said, though understanding didn't make it hurt less. I just wish. I wish this was easier. So do I. He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, pressing her face against his chest as he held her tightly. I'm sorry. For all of this. for the complications and the impossible choices. They stood like that for a long moment, drawing comfort from each other even as the conflict between them remained unresolved. Isla knew Maya was right. Loving someone with power over your career created impossible dynamics. But she also knew that walking away from Zephyr felt more impossible than navigating any asteroid field. The question was whether love could survive the constant collision of duty and desire, or if eventually, one would have to give way to the other. Love beyond boundaries. The next 48 hours were tense. Isla threw herself into preparing her research for archival, her movements sharp with barely contained frustration. She avoided Zephyr except when duty demanded otherwise, and even then kept their interactions coldly professional. It was childish, she knew, but the wound of having her work dismissed, even for valid reasons, was still too fresh. Maya tried to mediate, reminding Isla that Zephyr had made the only choice he could. Quinn, surprisingly perceptive beneath his playful exterior, told her that the commander had been walking the station corridors at all hours, clearly as miserable as she was. But pride and hurt kept her from reaching out. Until the day everything changed. The sample collection mission was supposed to be routine. Isla and 2 other scientists would take a small shuttle to gather final readings from the anomaly before the station relocated. Zephyr had approved the mission personally, though his jaw had been tight when he'd signed off on her participation. The collection itself went smoothly. Isla secured samples from the stellar formation's edge, her scientific excitement momentarily overwhelming her personal turmoil. The readings were extraordinary, confirmation of her theories about a new type of neutron star birth. This data alone might make her career. Beginning return to station, the pilot announced. ETA 12 minutes. Isla secured her collection kit and moved toward the shuttle's interior. That's when the anomaly pulsed. A wave of energy erupted from the stellar formation with no warning, slamming into their shuttle like a physical blow. Alarms screamed. The pilot fought the controls as they spun wildly, the station growing smaller in the viewport as they were thrown off course. Mayday, Mayday, the pilot transmitted. Shuttle Artemis experiencing catastrophic system failure. We're venting atmosphere and... The communication cut off as another surge hit them. Isla felt the sickening lurch of zero gravity as the shuttle's artificial gravity failed. She grabbed for a safety harness, but the force of the spin threw her against the bulkhead. Pain exploded in her shoulder. Emergency protocols, someone shouted, but the words seemed distant beneath the roar of escaping air. Isla managed to grab her EVA suit, pulling it on with shaking hands as the shuttle continued to tumble. Through the viewport, she could see debris from the hull spinning away into space. They were breaking apart. The pilot's voice crackled over the emergency channel. All personnel, abandon shuttle. I repeat, abandon shuttle. Deploy emergency tethers and wait for rescue. The next few minutes were chaos. Isla got her helmet sealed just as the cabin pressure dropped completely. She clipped into an emergency tether and pushed off from the dying shuttle, trying to control her breathing as the vast emptiness of space surrounded her. The anomaly pulsed again in the distance, beautiful and terrible, the stellar phenomenon that might have made her career now responsible for potentially ending her life. Her oxygen readout showed 40 minutes. Maybe less with her elevated heart rate. Static crackled in her helmet. Then Zephyr's voice, strained but controlled, Artemis crew, this is Commander Aldrin. We have your positions. Rescue shuttle launching in 2 minutes. Hold your positions and conserve oxygen. Commander, the pilot responded, recommend you send Lieutenant Vask. He's qualified for. I'm piloting the rescue myself, Zephyr interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. 30 seconds to launch. Sir, protocol prohibits command staff from. Noted. Aldrin out. Isla closed her eyes, a mixture of terror and something that felt dangerously like hope flooding through her. He was coming. Despite protocol, despite everything, he was coming for them. The rescue shuttle appeared within 3 minutes, Zephyr's piloting as precise as it had been during the asteroid field navigation. He maneuvered close to each crew member, bringing them aboard with methodical efficiency. The pilot was first, then the other scientist. Then it was Isla's turn. She watched through her faceplate as Zephyr extended the magnetic tether toward her. Their eyes met across the void of space, and even through the helmets and distance, she saw everything in his gaze. Fear, relief, love that transcended any protocol or regulation. The tether connected. He began to pull her in. That's when her oxygen alarm started blinking red. The impact against the bulkhead must have damaged her tank more than she'd realized. Her readout dropped from 15 minutes to 3, then to 1. "Zephyr," she gasped, using his name for the first time over an open channel. "My oxygen." "I see it." His voice was tight. "Don't talk. Conserve what you have. You're 30 seconds from the airlock." But 30 seconds felt like an eternity as her vision started to narrow at the edges. The universe was getting darker, the stars fading. Her last thought, strangely peaceful, was that at least she'd die looking at something beautiful. Then strong arms were around her, pulling her through the airlock. The door sealed. Pressure returned with a hiss. Hands fumbled with her helmet, yanking it off. "Breathe," Zephyr commanded, his own helmet already removed, his face inches from hers. "Isla, breathe." She gasped, dragging air into her lungs in painful gulps. Oxygen had never tasted so sweet. When her vision cleared, she found herself cradled against Zephyr's chest, his arms locked around her like he might never let go. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I came." His voice was rough with emotion. "Did you think anything, protocol, duty, the entire galactic command, could stop me from reaching you?" The pilot cleared his throat from the cockpit. "Commander, we should return to the station. Medical will want to check everyone." "Agreed," Zephyr said, but he didn't release Isla. If anything, he held her tighter as the shuttle turned toward home. In the medical bay, after the doctor had cleared her with nothing worse than bruising and minor oxygen deprivation, Isla found Zephyr waiting outside. The moment he saw her, something in his expression cracked. "I thought I'd lost you," he said simply. "When your oxygen alarm went off, when I saw you going unconscious, He stopped, unable to continue. "But you didn't lose me." She reached for his hand, twining their fingers together despite knowing half the station could see them through the medical bay windows. "You saved me. I violated direct protocol doing it. Central Command will have questions about why the station commander personally led a rescue mission." "Let them ask," Isla said firmly. "You made the right choice." "Did I? Or did I risk everything, my command, the station's safety, military regulations, because I couldn't bear the thought of a universe without you in it?" "Both," she answered honestly. "And I don't care. Zephyr, I've spent the last 2 days being angry at you for choosing duty over my work. But out there, when I thought I was going to die, all I could think was that I'd wasted our last days together being stubborn and hurt. I don't want to do that anymore." He pulled her into his arms right there in the corridor, uncaring of who might see. "I love you," he said against her hair. "More than command, more than protocol, more than anything. That terrifies me, but I'm done pretending otherwise." "I love you too," Isla whispered. "And I'm sorry, about the research project, about making it harder than it had to be. You were right. No discovery is worth risking lives." "Actually," came Maya's voice from down the corridor, making them both jump, "you might want to hold that thought." The botanist approached with a data pad, Quinn trailing behind her with a grin. "The energy pulse that hit your shuttle? It gave us the most comprehensive readings of the anomaly we've ever captured. The automatic sensors recorded everything. Your research isn't dead, Isla, it's just beginning. And the data proves the formation is stabilizing, not becoming more dangerous. I already transmitted it to Central Command with a request to reconsider the relocation order." Isla stared at the data scrolling across the pad, hardly daring to believe it. This is exactly what I needed to prove the formation theory." "Seems like almost dying had a silver lining," Quinn quipped, then winced when Maya elbowed him. "Central Command responded an hour ago," Maya continued. "The relocation order is suspended pending further analysis. You get to keep your research, Isla." She looked up at Zephyr, seeing her own wonder reflected in his expression. "We get to stay." "Apparently so." He smiled, really smiled, the expression transforming his face. "Though I expect I'll be explaining my protocol violations for the next month." "I'll explain them with you," Isla offered. "Actually," Quinn interjected, "the whole crew is prepared to testify that the commander's actions saved 3 lives and preserved critical scientific data. Turns out everyone on this station has been rooting for you two for months. We're not about to let command separate you over protocol technicalities." Isla felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming realization that she'd found more than just research and discovery in the depths of space. She'd found family, found purpose, found love in the most unexpected place. "Thank you," she said to Maya and Quinn, her voice thick with emotion. "Both of you." "Just invite us to the bonding ceremony," Maya said with a wink. "I've always wanted to see how Aldrinians celebrate." As they walked away, Zephyr pulled Isla close again, his lips brushing her temple. "They're not wrong, you know. About the bonding ceremony. I realize this is fast and complicated, and probably completely illogical, but—" "Yes," Isla interrupted, standing on her toes to kiss him properly. "Whatever you're about to ask, yes." He laughed against her mouth, the sound filled with joy and relief. "I haven't even asked yet." "You will. Eventually. And I'm saying yes now so you know, there's no universe, no protocol, no obstacle that will change my answer." That night, they stood together in the observation deck where everything had begun, watching the anomaly pulse with gentle light in the distance. Zephyr's arms were wrapped around her from behind, her back pressed against his chest, their heartbeats synchronizing in the quiet. "I never expected this," he murmured. "When I took command of this station, I thought I was choosing duty over any possibility of personal connection. I thought that was the price of leadership." "And now?" Isla asked, lacing her fingers through his. "Now I know that sometimes the bravest choice isn't between duty and love, it's finding a way to honor both. It's not easy, and it won't always be perfect, but with you." He turned her in his arms, his violet eyes holding hers with absolute certainty. "With you, I want to try. We'll navigate it together," Isla promised. "Like the asteroid field. Like the rescue. We're better as a team than we ever were alone." He kissed her then, tender and deep, a promise of all the tomorrows they would share. Around them, the universe spun on in its infinite dance, but for this moment, everything that mattered was right here. 2 hearts finding their orbit around each other, love proving itself stronger than the gravity of duty or the vast emptiness of space. They had found their pattern in the chaos, their constant in the variables, their home in the impossible distance between stars. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.